Most people think our world is run by money or politics, but they're wrong. It runs on data. And right now, humanity is operating on a glitched system. For 2,000 years, we've been running an OS with 30% of its source code intentionally deleted. While the West was busy editing the files to keep us controllable, deep in the highlands of Ethiopia, a different record was being protected. It's not just a Bible, it's a backup server for a lost technology. Everything you call reality is just a low-resolution version of the truth. It's time to access the original file. Think about language for a second. We treat it like a bridge, a way to get an idea from my head to yours. But that's a primitive view. In the ancient world, language wasn't just a bridge, it was a simulator. It was the rendering engine for reality itself. When the West built its civilization, it chose Latin and Greek. Powerful languages, sure, but they were built for administration, for law, for tax codes. They are flat languages. They were designed to manage a material world. But in the stone monasteries of Ethiopia, the monks preserved Ge'ez. This isn't just an old script, it's an Abugida system. Each character isn't just a letter, it's a fusion of geometry and sound. It's a multidimensional language designed to model the structure of the universe, not just talk about it. This is where it gets unsettling. When the Bible was translated from these original frequencies into Western tongues, something catastrophic happened. It wasn't just a translation, it was a lossy compression. Imagine taking a high-definition 4K RAW file and squeezing it into a tiny, pixelated JPEG. You can still see the basic shapes, you can recognize the characters, you get the general gist of the story. But the metadata, the depth, the raw power hidden in the pixels, it's gone. It evaporated in the process. The Western 66-book Bible isn't necessarily wrong, it's just low resolution. It's the safe, simplified version of a reality that is actually far more complex and far more dangerous than we were ever allowed to believe. Let's look at the hardware level. Take a word as simple as soul. In the West, it's a vague, poetic concept, something airy, something you have. It's a metaphor. But look at the original Ge'ez roots found in the Ethiopian manuscripts. Inside that word are specific technical instructions. It's not a poem, it's a frequency manual. It describes the precise relationship between the human nervous system and the literal vibrations of the atmosphere. And breath? In our Bibles, it's just air. In the Ethiopian texts, it's a protocol. It's a set of tuning instructions for your DNA. These weren't metaphors meant for Sunday school. They were technical specs for a spiritual technology that allows a human being to bypass the material matrix entirely. The West didn't just hide the books. They flatlined the language so we couldn't even recognize the technology when we saw it. Here is the aha moment that should haunt you. We are currently trying to run 3D spiritual software on a 1D mental screen. We read these ancient texts and we see miracles or myths. Why? Because our current linguistic operating system isn't capable of rendering the actual data. Our words are too small. Our definitions are too shallow. It's like trying to play a high-end virtual reality game on a pocket calculator. You get the error messages, but you never see the world. We've been told for centuries that we lack the faith to see the truth. But what if it's not faith we're missing? What if it's the bandwidth? Ethiopia didn't just keep the books, they kept the decoder. They kept the high-resolution source code of the human experience. And as we begin to re-examine these raw files, we realize that the miracles of the past weren't magic. They were physics. Physics that our flat, Western languages were designed to make us forget. And if the language itself was a filter, wait until you see what they did to our biological hardware. If language is the software, then your body is the hardware, specifically your DNA. For centuries, we've been told that the bloodline of Solomon in Ethiopia was a matter of royal pride, a legend, a story for the history books. But what if it was something far more functional? What if that lineage wasn't a title, but a biological antenna? In the Ethiopian tradition, ancestry isn't just about who your father was. It's about the preservation of a specific genetic frequency. Think of it as a high-gain receiver, a piece of biological hardware designed to pick up signals that the rest of humanity has lost the ability to hear. But an antenna is useless if it's covered in rust. And this is where the laws of the Ethiopian Bible stop being religion and start being maintenance protocols. Take circumcision, for example. The West sees it as a tradition, but the Ethiopian text insists on the eighth day, exactly the eighth day. Modern medical science now knows that this is the precise moment when vitamin K and clotting factors in a newborn reach their lifetime peak. It is the perfect biological window. This isn't ancient wisdom, this is a precise medical command. And then there are the dietary laws, the fasting. For 3,000 years, the Ethiopian Orthodox have maintained one of the most rigorous dietary systems on earth. In the West, we call this discipline. In Ethiopia, it's a chemical purge. It's about keeping the blood chemistry at a specific pH level. Why? Because of epigenetics. We now know that your environment, what you eat, how you live, the toxins you encounter, can literally flip the switches on your DNA. By keeping the body in a state of constant biological purity, the Ethiopians aren't just being holy, they are keeping the hardware clean. They are preventing the rifts and errors that the Western lifestyle introduces into our genetic code. They are keeping the antenna tuned. But here is the real shock, the Sabbath. In the West, the Sabbath is a day for church. In the Ethiopian manuscripts, it is described as a mandatory neuro-reset. It is 24 hours of absolute separation from the noise, the commerce, and the frequencies of the material world. It's a silent chamber for the nervous system. When you remove the interference of the world, your internal receiver begins to calibrate. You stop being a walking tomb driven by external stimuli and start becoming a self-aware mystic. You become controllable by the spirit, not the system. The Western Church dropped these rules because they were inconvenient. They told us we were saved by grace, so we didn't need to worry about the hardware. But the Ethiopian monks knew better. They knew that if the body is corrupted by toxins and the mind is drowned in noise, the signal from the divine simply cannot get through. Purity isn't a moral judgment. It's a technical requirement for signal reception. If you want to access the forbidden knowledge described in the books of Enoch and the Mashafakan, you cannot run that data on a corrupted biological unit. You need a clean system. You need a biological lock that matches the key found in the text. The Ethiopian Bible teaches that the kingdom of heaven is literally inside your body, hidden in the silence between your thoughts. But to find it, you have to maintain the temple. You have to follow the protocols. By deleting these biological commands, the West didn't just simplify the faith, they dismantled our equipment. They left us with the software, but broke our hardware. And while we struggle to find meaning in a world of static, the Ethiopians have been quietly maintaining the only functional receivers left on the planet. And if you think the biological hardware is impressive, wait until you see the physical tools they use to carve their reality directly into the earth. The technology of light is not a metaphor. If the body is the antenna and the soul is the signal, then you need a place to shield that signal, a sanctuary for frequency. Look at Lalibela, 11 massive churches carved straight into solid volcanic rock. But here is the mistake most archaeologists make. They look at it as a building. It's not. It's a machine. In the West, we build towers, cathedrals that scrape the sky. We try to climb our way to the divine, stacking stone upon stone. But Ethiopia? They did the opposite. They dug down. They created negative space. Why carve into the earth? For the same reason you put a high-end recording studio in a basement. Isolation. Solid rock is the ultimate noise-canceling material. By digging deep into the crust, They eliminated the atmospheric interference of the world's surface. They created a perfectly shielded resonance chamber. And these aren't just caves, they are monolithic, carved from a single, unbroken piece of stone. No mortar, no joints, no gaps. Why does that matter? Because in a single, unbroken block of stone, energy doesn't dissipate. It doesn't get lost in the seams. It echoes. It amplifies. It creates what physicists call standing waves. Imagine the monks chanting in these pitch-black tunnels. Their voices aren't just sounds, they are frequencies. Because the churches are made of one solid piece of tough, volcanic rock, the entire building begins to vibrate at a specific hertz. Recent acoustic studies in similar ancient sites have found a recurring frequency, 111 hertz. This isn't an accident. 111 hertz is the frequency associated with the deactivation of the prefrontal cortex in the human brain. It's the frequency of the aha moment. It's the frequency that shifts the mind into a state of deep, mystical awareness. It's neurosynchronization through architecture. The churches weren't built to house people, they were built to tune them. It's acoustic archaeology, a technology of sound that has been hiding in plain sight for 800 years. And it gets deeper. In the ancient city of Aksum, there is a device that is supposedly more powerful than the churches themselves, the Ark of the Covenant. The West calls it a religious relic, a gold box for the Ten Commandments. But the descriptions in the Ethiopian royal chronicles, the Kebra Nagast, tell a different story. They describe it as a weapon, a source of blinding light that turned the tide of battles, a thing that causes cataracts and skin lesions in its guardians. That doesn't sound like a wooden box. It sounds like a power source, high-energy technology. Some theorists suggest the Ark wasn't meant to be worshipped. It was meant to be used, a signal amplifier, an energy storage unit. If the 11 churches of Lalibela were the speakers, the Ark was the battery. It was the high-energy core of Christianity's original source code, a technology of light that the West couldn't control, so they told us it was lost. But Ethiopia didn't lose it. They just moved it to the only place on Earth shielded enough to handle the feedback. We've been taught that these were primitive people using chisels and hammers. But look at the precision. Look at the physics. It requires a level of planning so precise it suggests a computer-like mind. Could the Ethiopians have possessed a lost technology? A way to soften stone with sound? A way to manipulate matter through frequency? If their technology was this advanced, it changes everything. It means the miracles were just physics we haven't rediscovered yet. And it means the warnings they left behind about the parasites currently infecting our digital age aren't just metaphors. They are technical alerts. But to understand the parasite, we have to look at the malware currently running in our own minds. The builder of shadows is not a ghost. It's a virus. Let's stop talking about evil as a guy in a red suit with a pitchfork. That's a child's story, a fairy tale designed to keep you from looking at the actual mechanism of your own destruction. In the stone monasteries of Ethiopia, they describe something much more sophisticated, a parasite. They call it the wind of error. But if you look at it through the lens of modern neuroscience, it's not a ghost. It's a cognitive virus. It's malware for the human mind. The ancient texts tell us that the Watchers, those fallen entities, didn't just descend to Earth to teach us about weapons or seduction. That's just the surface. What they really did was perform a massive system hack. They injected unauthorized code into the human interface. They found the back door into our consciousness, and they've been running the program ever since. And once this malware is in, it goes straight for your hardware. Specifically, it targets the amygdala, the fear center. The virus hijacks your biological survival mechanisms to create toxic dopamine loops. It's a literal addiction to your own infection. Every time you feel outrage, every time you sink into greed, every time you let fear dictate your reality, The virus triggers a hit of dopamine in your brain. You're not thinking these things, you're being fed them. You become addicted to the very thing that is destroying your access to the truth. This is how you create a walking tomb. Think about that image for a second. A walking tomb. It's a person who is physically alive. They breathe, they eat, they post on social media, but spiritually, they are offline. Their input filter has been completely compromised. They aren't seeing reality, they are seeing a rendered simulation provided by the malware. They are no longer a sovereign being, they are a host. A biological vessel for a deceptive force that wears their face and speaks with their voice. It's a zombie apocalypse, but for the soul. But here's the real shock. The Ethiopian Meshafakan, the Book of the Covenant, doesn't give us a ritual to fix this. It doesn't ask for a tithe. It gives us a debug protocol. It describes a specific technique to cool down the nervous system. It's an instruction manual on how to regain control of the gate. It teaches you to watch your thoughts not as your thoughts, but as incoming data packets. If a packet contains fear, greed, or division, you flag it. You don't let it run. By interrupting the dopamine loop, you literally cut the power supply to the virus. This is what the Standard Bible calls gnosis, or knowledge. But in the West, that word was turned into a heresy. Rome didn't want a world of self-aware debuggers who could clean their own systems. They needed a world of infected citizens who feared the system and bowed to the hierarchy. Because if you can reboot your own soul, you become uncontrollable. You don't need a middleman to talk to God if you've cleared the static from your own receiver. The Ethiopian monks weren't just guarding old stories. They were guarding the break glass manual for the digital age. They knew a time would come when humanity would be lost in a web of illusions, where we see without eyes and speak without mouths. And in that age, the only way to survive is to know how to purge the malware. But clearing the virus is only the first step. Once your system is clean, you have to understand the geopolitical game being played with the very ground you stand on. Because the ultimate secret isn't just in your mind, it's hidden in the well of the world. Here is the question that haunts every skeptic. If Ethiopia holds the source code to human power, the original operating system of our species, then why are they not the masters of the world? Why is the keeper of the supreme knowledge one of the poorest nations on earth? It's a paradox that stops most people in their tracks. But here's the reveal. In the game of cosmic survival, poverty is not a failure. It is a security protocol. It's called the Guardian's Curse. You see, preservation and innovation are natural enemies. To keep a secret pure and unchanged for 3,000 years, you have to build a society that is hyper-conservative. You cannot have a civilization that is constantly evolving, constantly upgrading, and constantly chasing the next big thing. Innovation requires change. But the monks in the Ethiopian highlands were given a different command. Do not change a single letter. To protect a static truth, you have to lock your culture in stasis. You can't build Silicon Valley while you're guarding the Ark of the Covenant. One will eventually consume the other. To be the world's backup drive, Ethiopia had to sacrifice its material processing power. They chose to stay offline while the rest of the world went live and got infected. There is a strategic genius in this. It's called security through obscurity. Look at history. Ethiopia is the only African nation that was never colonized. When Italy invaded in 1896, they expected an easy win. Instead, they were crushed at the Battle of Adwa. But why didn't the other empires keep coming? Why didn't they level the country? Because to the eyes of the West, there was nothing to take. No industrial hubs to seize, no massive gold reserves to loot. By remaining poor and primitive in the material sense, Ethiopia became invisible to the great parasites of history. Their poverty was their armor. It was an air gap for the soul. If they had been a glittering, wealthy empire, Rome would have burned those monasteries to the ground centuries ago. By looking like nothing, they protected everything. The West is obsessed with the water. We want the money, the status, the latest gadgets. We want the water now. But the monks, they don't care about the water. They have the well. The West has built a massive, glittering civilization of consumers, but we've forgotten how to create the signal. We have the water, but our well is poisoned. Ethiopia, meanwhile, has been quietly maintaining the original source. They aren't interested in running the world. They are interested in making sure the world still has a reboot file when the current system crashes. Think of Ethiopia as the planet's ultimate hardwired, air-gapped server. While European cathedrals were being bombed and Western libraries were being rewritten by censors, the stone monasteries remained untouched. Why? Because they looked like nothing. Just monks in goatskins, just poor farmers in the dust. But that dust is the only place left where the original files of humanity haven't been corrupted by the malware of modernity. They aren't a third world country. They are a first world civilization that went into a 3,000-year deep sleep to survive the winter of the soul. They sacrificed their now for our next. They stayed in the dark so that the light wouldn't be found by those who would weaponize it. But the clock is ticking. As these texts explode online, as the well begins to overflow, it's a sign that the deep sleep is over. The reboot is beginning. But are we ready for the truth? Or is the illusion all we have left? So ask yourself, why now? These manuscripts sat in dark, mountain monasteries for 2 millennia. They survived fire, war, and the slow decay of time. They were under total lockdown. And then, in the blink of an eye, they explode across your screen. Between a meme and a news clip, there it is, the lost secret of the 40 days. This isn't a coincidence. It's not just a lucky find. According to the most radical interpretations of the Ethiopian manuscripts, this is a built-in emergency trigger, a final fail-safe. It's a break glass in case of emergency signal that was programmed to activate at a very specific moment in human history. Look at the world outside your window. We have entered what the ancient texts call the age of hallucination networks. We call it the digital age, a world where everyone is connected, but everything is fake. A world where people speak without mouths and see without eyes. Tell me that doesn't sound like AI. Tell me that doesn't sound like the algorithm. We are drowning in deep fakes and synthetic realities. We are losing our grip on what is actually real. We are becoming walking tombs in a digital cemetery, feeding on data that has no soul. The Ethiopian monks weren't just guarding old stories. They were guarding the antivirus for the era of the simulation. They were waiting for the moment when humanity would be so lost in the web of shadows that only the raw source code could shatter the illusion. The seal is broken because the crisis is here. So, where do you go from here? Most people will look for a new leader, a new institution, a new church. But if you've been paying attention to the Ethiopian raw files, you know that's just another trap. The builder of shadows loves stone temples. He loves hierarchies. He loves anything that puts a middleman between you and the truth. The true instruction is radical. It is biological. It is linguistic. You don't need a priest, you need a reboot. Start with the hardware. Follow the protocols. Cleanse the DNA. Look at what you're putting into your system, not just the food, but the frequencies, the noise, the dopamine loops. Perform the neuro reset of the Sabbath. Give your nervous system a chance to hear the signal again. This is the only way to purge the malware. Then, look at the software. Change your language. Stop using the flat definitions the West gave you. When you speak, speak with the intent to simulate reality, not just describe it. Reclaim the multidimensional power of your breath. These are not metaphors. They are the tools of light. They are the original weapons our species was meant to carry into the spiritual war. The Ethiopian Bible tells us that the darkness will wear a familiar face. It will look like a savior. It will look like the truth. But the only way to see through the mask is to have a system that is clean enough to recognize the glitch. The files are open, the source code is out. You are no longer a victim of a censored history. You are now part of a planetary rescue plan. But the question remains, are you ready to run the original software? Or is the simulation too comfortable to leave? The reboot has started. Don't be a walking tomb. Join the search for what was never meant to be lost. Hit like and subscribe to keep your receiver tuned. The truth isn't out there, it's being rendered inside you. The search continues.